Have you ever noticed how a single night in an unfamiliar place can feel like it changes you? How you wake up in a hotel room and feel somehow different than when you closed your eyes? For most people, this is just the disorientation of being away from home. But at the Chronos Grand Hotel, this feeling isn't psychological, pal. It's literally written on your face. The Chronos Grand sits on a quiet street corner in Prague, its Art Deco facade giving no hint of the impossible secret contained within its walls. To passing tourists, it appears to be just another elegant European hotel, the kind of place where weary travelers might spend a night or two while exploring the ancient city. The building's brass nameplate gleams in the afternoon sun, and doormen in crisp uniforms smile warmly at guests checking in for what they believe will be an ordinary stay. But nothing about the Chronos Grand is ordinary. Dr. Sarah Mitchell discovered this on what should have been a routine business trip to Prague in September 2023. As a 34-year-old biochemist attending a conference on cellular aging, Sarah was accustomed to the minor inconveniences of travel: delayed flights, mediocre hotel rooms, and the general exhaustion that comes with crossing time zones. When her usual hotel was overbooked, and she was redirected to the Chronos Grand, she thought little of the change beyond noting that the building looked more charming than her typical corporate accommodations. The check-in process was unusually thorough. Instead of simply asking for identification and a credit card, the front desk clerk, an elegantly dressed woman, who appeared to be in her 50s, handed Sarah an extensive questionnaire. "Just a few questions to help us provide the best possible experience," the clerk explained with a smile that seemed both welcoming and somehow knowing. "We pride ourselves on personalized service." The questions were strange. Along with standard inquiries about preferred room temperature and wake-up call times, the form asked about Sarah's health goals, her relationship with aging, whether she had any regrets about how she'd spent her youth, and what she might be willing to sacrifice for more time. Sarah filled out the form with a mixture of amusement and irritation, assuming it was some kind of elaborate marketing survey. She was tired from her flight, and just wanted to get to her room, shower, and prepare for the next day's conference sessions. "Excellent," the clerk said, reviewing Sarah's responses with apparent satisfaction. "I have the perfect room for you. Room 347, one of our specialty suites." The elevator that carried Sarah to the third floor moved with unusual smoothness, and she noticed that the floor numbers displayed weren't quite sequential. There seemed to be floors marked 2.5 and 3.7, though. She assumed this was some quirk of European numbering systems, or perhaps a renovation that had created mezzanine levels. Room 347 was beautiful in an old-world way that made Sarah's usual sterile business hotels seem depressing by comparison. The furniture was elegant antique pieces, the windows offered a view of Prague's stunning skyline, and the bathroom featured a clawfoot tub that looked like it had been installed during the hotel's original construction decades ago. What Sarah didn't notice immediately was the small brass plaque mounted discreetly beside the door, which read Room 347-2 years per night, pleasant dreams. Sarah collapsed into bed after a long day of travel and fell into deep, dreamless sleep. When she woke the next morning, she felt remarkably refreshed, more energetic than she had in months, with a clarity of mind that made her wonder if she'd been more stressed lately than she'd realized. It wasn't until she was brushing her teeth that she noticed something odd in the bathroom mirror. Her skin looked different, not dramatically but subtly. The fine lines around her eyes that had been bothering her lately seemed less pronounced. Her complexion appeared clearer, more radiant. She looked, for lack of a better description, younger. Sarah told herself she was imagining things. A good night's sleep could work wonders, and the flattering lighting in the bathroom might be creating an illusion. She was a scientist after all. She didn't believe in magic or miracle anti-aging treatments, especially not ones that occurred overnight in hotel rooms. But as she prepared for the day's conference sessions, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Her clothes fit differently, not dramatically, but as if her body had somehow become more toned and youthful overnight. Her hair seemed fuller, shinier. Even her posture felt different, more like the confident way she'd carried herself in her 20s, rather than the slightly hunched shoulders she'd developed from years of bending over laboratory equipment. The conference sessions that day were more engaging than Sarah had anticipated. Her mind felt sharper, her ability to process complex information enhanced. During the lunch break, a colleague she'd known for years commented that she looked fantastic and asked if she'd been doing something different with her skincare routine. That evening, Sarah returned to the Chronos Grand with a mixture of curiosity and scientific skepticism. She decided to conduct an informal experiment, taking detailed photographs of herself from multiple angles and carefully documenting her appearance before going to sleep. The next morning, the changes were undeniable. Sarah looked at herself in the mirror and saw the face of someone who was clearly younger than she had been the day before. Not just refreshed or well-rested, but actually, measurably younger. The photograph comparison confirmed what the mirror was showing. She appeared to have aged backwards by approximately 2 years overnight. Her first instinct was panic. As a biochemist, Sarah knew that rapid physical changes were usually signs of serious medical conditions. She checked her pulse, her blood pressure using a travel kit she always carried, and conducted every self-assessment she could think of. All her vital signs were not just normal but optimally healthy. Her second instinct was to investigate. Sarah went downstairs to the hotel lobby and approached the front desk clerk who had checked her in. In daylight, the woman looked different, not older or younger, exactly, but somehow temporally ambiguous, as if she existed outside normal aging processes. "Excuse me," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice calm and professional. "I need to ask about my room. Room 347, there's something unusual happening." The clerk smiled with the same knowing expression Sarah remembered from check-in. "Ah, you've noticed. How are you feeling this morning, Dr. Mitchell?" The fact that the clerk knew her title and seemed to expect this conversation was both alarming and oddly reassuring. "I feel fine, better than fine actually, but I look different, younger, significantly younger." "Yes, room 347 is one of our most popular accommodations," the clerk replied casually, as if discussing room service options. 2 years younger per night, very reasonable rate considering. Sarah stared at the woman, processing this impossible statement. "Are you telling me that this hotel, that staying here actually makes people younger?" The Chronos Grand has been providing temporal hospitality services since 1923, the clerk explained with matter-of-fact professionalism. Different rooms offer different experiences. Some guests prefer to age forward, might us to skip through difficult periods of their lives, or to gain the wisdom of advanced years quickly. Others, like yourself, are interested in reclaiming time they feel was lost or wasted. Sarah's scientific mind reeled. "That's impossible. Aging is a cellular process governed by telomere degradation, DNA damage, and metabolic factors. You can't just reverse it overnight." "Dr. Mitchell," the clerk said gently, "you're a biochemist. You understand that there's still much about cellular aging that science hasn't explained. The Chronos Grand exists in the spaces between what's known and what's possible." The clerk reached under the desk and pulled out a leather-bound ledger that looked decades old. "Would you like to see our guest register? Some of the world's most prominent scientists, philosophers, and artists have stayed with us over the years." Sarah found herself looking at signatures and dates that spanned nearly a century. Names she recognized from history textbooks, Nobel Prize winners, acclaimed authors, and influential political figures. The entries showed not just names and dates, but room numbers and notations about the temporal effects each guest had experienced. Einstein had stayed in room 512 for 3 nights in 1935, with a notation reading plus 15 years for accelerated insights into relativity. Marie Curie had occupied room 203 in 1904, marked -5 years to extend research time. More recent entries showed contemporary figures she recognized: tech innovators, medical researchers, artists who had made their greatest breakthroughs after staying at the hotel. "This is impossible," Sarah repeated, but her voice lacked conviction. The evidence was literally written on her face, and the guest register provided historical context that was difficult to dismiss. "Dr. Mitchell," the clerk said, "you're scheduled to check out this afternoon. Would you like to extend your stay?"
All room 347 could take you back another 2 years tonight, or perhaps you'd like to try a different room. Room 180 offers a more gradual reverse aging, 6 months per night. Room 892 provides forward aging for those who want to skip ahead and see how their current research might develop. Sarah felt overwhelmed by choices that shouldn't have been possible. What are the risks? The side effects? The clerk's expression became more serious. "Time is not without cost, Dr. Mitchell. Those who age backwards may find that they lose some of the emotional maturity and life experience that comes with years. Those who age forward sometimes gain knowledge but sacrifice the energy and optimism of youth, and everyone who stays here must eventually return to their original timeline. We are temporal tourists, not permanent time travelers." "What does that mean, return to the original timeline?" "The effects of staying at the Chronos Grand are temporary," the clerk explained. "The younger or older version of yourself that you become here will gradually revert to your natural age over time, usually within 6 months to a year after leaving. Think of it as borrowing time rather than permanently altering it." Sarah spent the rest of the day walking through Prague, trying to process what she had learned. The city's ancient streets and timeless architecture seemed to take on new meaning as she contemplated the possibility that time itself might be more fluid than she had ever imagined. She found herself studying her reflection in shop windows, marveling at the face that looked back at her face, her own face, but as it had been in her early 30s instead of her mid-30s. The change wasn't just cosmetic, she felt different,
more energetic, more optimistic, less burdened by the accumulated stress and disappointments of recent years. That evening, Sarah made a decision that would change her understanding of time, aging, and human possibility. She returned to the Chronos Grand and asked to extend her stay. Room 347 again, or would you like to try something different? The clerk asked. Sarah thought carefully. What other options do I have? The clerk pulled out a detailed brochure that looked like a menu, but described temporal experiences instead of meals. The options were stunning in their variety and implications. Room 423 plus 1 year per night, with enhanced memory retention and pattern recognition. Room 156, minus 6 months per night, with preservation of current knowledge and experience. Room 679, variable aging based on guests' emotional state during sleep. Room 901, forward aging specifically designed for researchers and inventors. Room 245, backward aging that stops at the guest's optimal physical condition. Room 333, time-neutral room, that provides accelerated healing and recovery. How is any of this possible? Sarah asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming her disbelief. The clerk leaned forward conspirationally. Dr. Mitchell, you study cellular aging. You know that time doesn't affect all biological processes equally. Some cells regenerate quickly, others slowly. Some tissues age faster under stress, others barely change for decades. The Chronos Grand simply amplifies and redirects these natural temporal processes. But the mechanisms? Would you like to meet our head of research? Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell has been studying the hotel's effects for over 40 years. She might be able to explain the science in ways that would satisfy your professional curiosity. Sarah agreed and within an hour found herself in the hotel's hidden research facility, located in basement levels that hadn't been visible on the elevator panel. Dr. Hartwell appeared to be in her 60s, but her eyes held the depth of someone who had lived far longer. Dr. Mitchell, Dr. Hartwell said, shaking Sarah's hand with surprising strength. Welcome to the Chronos Research Laboratory. I understand you're having difficulty accepting what you've experienced. The laboratory was unlike anything Sarah had seen, a combination of cutting-edge scientific equipment and apparatus that looked like it belonged in a steampunk novel. Machines hummed quietly, monitoring what appeared to be temporal fields and chronological fluctuations. I've been studying the hotel's effects for 4 decades, Dr. Hartwell explained as she led Sarah through the facility. What we've discovered is that time at the quantum level is far more malleable than classical physics suggests. The building itself sits on what we call a temporal nexus natural anomaly where the normal flow of time becomes flexible. Dr. Hartwell showed Sarah brain scans, cellular analyses and longitudinal studies of hotel guests spanning decades. The data was compelling and scientifically rigorous, documenting measurable changes in telomere length, cellular regeneration rates, and neuroplasticity based on the rooms guests occupied. The most fascinating discovery, Dr. Hartwell continued, is that consciousness plays a crucial role in how the temporal effects manifest. Guests who approach their stay with clear intentions and emotional readiness experience more pronounced and beneficial effects than those who are merely curious or skeptical. What are the long-term implications? Sarah asked. If someone could repeatedly stay here, could they essentially become immortal? Dr. Hartwell's expression grew somber. We've discovered that there are natural limits. The hotel's effects work best when used sparingly, and with specific purposes. Guests who try to abuse the temporal properties, staying too long, returning too frequently, or attempting to skip large portions of their natural timeline, often experience what we call temporal displacement syndrome. Which means, they become unstuck in time, unable to maintain a consistent age or timeline, experiencing rapid fluctuations between different temporal states. It's unpleasant and ultimately fatal. The warning sobered Sarah, but also increased her fascination with the possibilities. Here was a real-world application of theoretical physics that could revolutionize medicine, psychology, and human development, if it could be understood and safely utilized. Dr. Hartwell, I'd like to propose a collaboration. My research focuses on cellular aging mechanisms. If I could study the hotel's effects from a biochemical perspective while experiencing them firsthand. Dr. Hartwell smiled. Dr. Mitchell, that's exactly why you were directed here. Your conference hotel wasn't overbooked by accident. We've been following your research on telomere regeneration, and we believe your expertise could help us better understand how the Chronos Grand's temporal fields interact with cellular aging processes. What followed was the most extraordinary month of Sarah's career. She extended her stay at the hotel, carefully alternating between different rooms to experience various temporal effects while conducting detailed scientific observations of the changes occurring in her own body and mind. Room 245 became her favorite. It provided backward aging that stopped at what appeared to be her optimal physical condition, around age 28, while preserving all her accumulated knowledge and experience. She spent 3 nights there, documenting how her cells responded to the temporal regression and studying the biochemical mechanisms that made it possible. Room 901 was more challenging, but equally fascinating. The forward aging room allowed her to experience herself at 45, 50, and eventually 60 years old, gaining insights into how her current research might develop and what health challenges she should prepare for. The wisdom and perspective she gained during these experiences provided invaluable guidance for her life and career planning. Perhaps most remarkably, Room 679S, where aging varied based on emotional state, taught Sarah about the profound connection between psychological well-being and physical aging. When she went to sleep feeling stressed or unhappy, she aged rapidly overnight. When she slept feeling fulfilled and joyful, she grew younger. The room served as a powerful teacher about the importance of emotional health and maintaining physical vitality. Dr. Hartwell introduced Sarah to other long-term guests and researchers who were studying various aspects of the hotel's temporal properties. There was Dr. Chen, a neuroscientist studying how forward aging affected brain development and wisdom acquisition. Dr. Rodriguez, a psychologist investigating the emotional and social implications of temporal mobility. Dr. Kim, a philosopher exploring the ethical questions raised by the ability to manipulate personal timelines. Together they formed an informal research collective, sharing data and insights about the relationship between time, consciousness, and human development. Their work revealed that the Chronos Grand wasn't just a temporal anomaly, it was a window into human potential that challenged fundamental assumptions about growth, aging, and the nature of time itself. But the most profound revelations came from Sarah's interactions with other hotel guests who weren't researchers but ordinary people seeking to address specific life challenges through temporal manipulation. There was Margaret, a 70-year-old artist who used the backward aging rooms to reclaim the physical energy she needed to complete her life's work. "I have so many paintings left to create," she told Sarah, "but my hands shake too much now, and I get tired so easily. A few nights in room 156 gives me the stamina to work for weeks." David, a 25-year-old entrepreneur, used forward aging rooms to gain the wisdom and perspective he needed to navigate complex business decisions. "I can see how my choices today will affect my life 20 years from now," he explained. "It's like having a preview of the consequences before I commit to a path." Elena, a middle-aged mother, alternated between rooms based on what her family needed from her. "Some weeks I need the energy and optimism of my younger self to keep up with my teenagers. Other times I need the patience and wisdom of my older self to guide them through difficult challenges." Each guest taught Sarah something new about the relationship between time, identity, and human flourishing. The hotel wasn't just providing temporal tourism, it was offering personalized solutions to the fundamental challenges of human development and aging. But Sarah also observed the darker side of temporal manipulation. Some guests became addicted to the experiences, constantly seeking to escape their natural timeline rather than learning to live fully within it. Others suffered from what Dr. Hartwell called temporal dysphoria, so deep dissatisfaction with their natural age and a compulsive need to be older or younger than they actually were. "The key," Dr. Hartwell explained, "is using the hotel's capabilities as a tool for growth and understanding, rather than as an escape from the natural rhythm of life. The most successful guests are those who use their temporal experiences to better appreciate and optimize their real timeline." After a month of research and personal exploration, Sarah faced a difficult decision. She had gained invaluable scientific data and personal insights from her stay at the Chronos Grand, but she also knew that prolonged temporal manipulation could lead to the displacement syndrome Dr. Hartwell had warned about. More importantly, Sarah realized that her time at the hotel had taught her something crucial about aging in time that couldn't be learned through any amount of laboratory research: the importance of living fully in whatever age you actually are. "The hotel is extraordinary," she told Dr. Hartwell during their final consultation. "But I think I understand now that the goal isn't to escape time or control it completely. It's to understand time well enough to make peace with it." Dr. Hartwell nodded approvingly. "That's the conclusion reached by most of our wisest guests. The Chronos Grand offers the gift of perspective, the ability to see your life from different temporal vantage points, so that you can return to your natural timeline with greater appreciation and intention." Sarah checked out of the hotel looking exactly as she had when she arrived, 34 years old, with all the experiences and knowledge that age represented. But she carried with her something invaluable, a deep understanding of time as a flexible, meaningful dimension of human experience, rather than just an enemy to be fought or a resource to be hoarded. Her research from the hotel revolutionized her work on cellular aging. Instead of focusing solely on extending lifespan, Sarah began developing therapies that help people optimize their health and vitality at whatever age they happen to be. Her insights about the connection between emotional well-being and physical aging led to breakthrough treatments that improved quality of life across all age groups. But perhaps more importantly, Sarah's experience at the Chronos Grand changed how she lived her daily life. She became more present, more intentional about how she spent her time, and more accepting of the natural aging process while still working to maintain her health and vitality. 5 years later, Sarah returned to Prague for another conference. She walked past the Chronos Grand and smiled at the memories of her extraordinary month there. The doormen nodded respectfully, and she could see the familiar clerk through the lobby windows, checking in new guests who were about to discover the malleable nature of time. Sarah didn't go in. She had learned what the hotel had to teach her, and she was content to age naturally while applying the wisdom she had gained about optimizing each stage of life. But she kept the hotel's business card in her wallet, knowing that someday, perhaps when she was much older and facing the final chapters of her life, she might choose to return for one last temporal adventure. The woman who had discovered the hotel where each room aged you differently had learned that the real gift wasn't controlling time, but understanding it well enough to live each moment of your natural timeline with intention, appreciation, and joy. And in her laboratory, working on research that helped people age more gracefully and live more fully at every stage of life, Sarah carried the profound knowledge that time itself was not the enemy of human happiness. Ignorance of time's true nature was. But Sarah's story with the Chronos Grand was far from over. 3 years after her initial stay, she received an encrypted email that would draw her back into the world of temporal hospitality and reveal secrets about the hotel that even Dr. Hartwell hadn't shared with her. The message was brief but intriguing. Dr. Mitchell, your research on temporal cellular regeneration has attracted attention from parties who understand the deeper implications of your work at our establishment. There are aspects of the Chronos Grand that you haven't yet discovered. Would you be interested in learning about the hotel's true purpose? A friend. Attached to the email was a photograph that made Sarah's blood run cold. It showed the hotel's guest registry, but opened to a section she had never seen. Mail pages dating back to the 1920s that listed not just names and room effects, but something called temporal contribution scores and notations about timeline stabilization. The photograph showed her own name, with a score of 847 and a notation that read, "Subject successfully integrated temporal knowledge without timeline disruption, cleared for Phase 2 recruitment." Sarah stared at the image, feeling a chill of recognition mixed with dread. She had thought her month at the hotel was about personal growth and scientific discovery, but the clinical language of the registry suggested something far more systematic and possibly sinister. Against her better judgment, Sarah booked a return trip to Prague. When she arrived at the Chronos Grand, the familiar clerk greeted her with the same knowing smile, but this time Sarah detected something different in her expression, a hint of appraisal, as if she were being evaluated for something. "Welcome back, Dr. Mitchell," the clerk said. "I trust your research has been proceeding well since your last visit." "I received an email," Sarah said carefully. "Someone wanted to discuss the hotel's true purpose." The clerk's smile became more genuine. "Ah, you've been invited to meet the board. How wonderful. They've been quite impressed with your integration of temporal experiences." The board. The Temporal Conservation Society. The organization that actually owns and operates the Chronos Grand. Would you like to meet them? They're gathered in the founder's suite NOS, a room that doesn't appear on our standard floor plans. Sarah found herself being led to a private elevator hidden behind what appeared to be a maintenance door. The elevator descended far below the research laboratory she remembered, finally opening onto a floor that seemed to exist outside normal architectural space. The founder's suite was unlike anything Sarah had seen in the hotel. Instead of the elegant historical decor of the guest rooms, this space had the feel of a high-tech command center crossed with a museum. Walls lined with monitors displayed what appeared to be temporal flow charts, timeline maps, and data streams from hotels around the world. At the center of the room sat a conference table where 7 individuals waited for her. Sarah recognized Dr. Hartwell, but the others were strangers, though each had the same temporal ambiguity she had noticed in the hotel staff, as if their ages were somehow negotiable rather than fixed. "Dr. Mitchell," said a distinguished man who appeared to be the group's leader, "I'm Professor Marcus Blackwood, chairman of the Temporal Conservation Society. Thank you for accepting our invitation." Professor Blackwood gestured for Sarah to sit, and she found herself facing a panel that felt more like a job interview than a casual meeting. "I suppose you're wondering about the true nature of your experiences here," Professor Blackwood continued. "The personal growth and scientific insights you gained were genuine, but they were also a test." Sarah felt her scientific skepticism warring with growing concern. A test for what? To determine whether you could handle knowledge about humanity's real relationship with time, said Dr. Hartwell. Sarah, the Chronos Grand isn't unique. There are 17 similar facilities around the world, all operated by the Temporal Conservation Society. We've been managing human interaction with temporal anomalies for over a century. Another board member, a woman who looked simultaneously young and ancient, leaned forward. Dr. Mitchell, what do you know about temporal paradoxes and their effect on reality stability? Sarah searched her memory of physics courses. Theoretical models suggest that significant changes to timelines could create paradoxes that might destabilize causality itself. Exactly, Professor Blackwood said. And what we've discovered is that human consciousness naturally generates what we call temporal pressure minds, the unconscious desire to change past events, skip forward through difficulties, or manipulate personal timelines. Left unchecked, this pressure can create dangerous instabilities in the fabric of time itself. Dr. Hartwell activated a holographic display that showed a complex map of temporal disturbances around the globe. The hotels serve as pressure release valves, she explained. We provide controlled, safe opportunities for people to experience temporal manipulation so they don't attempt more dangerous forms of timeline alteration. Sarah stared at the display, beginning to understand the implications. You're saying that people's natural desires to change their ages, or skip through time, could actually damage reality. We're saying it has damaged reality, said the ancient-looking woman. Multiple times throughout history, the 1918 influenza pandemic, the stock market crash of 1929, the unusual number of natural disasters in recent decades, all were caused by amateur attempts at temporal manipulation, creating paradox cascades. Professor Blackwood nodded gravely. The Temporal Conservation Society was founded after the influenza pandemic, when our predecessor organization realized that humanity's growing technological sophistication was making dangerous temporal experiments increasingly likely. The scope of what Sarah was learning made her head spin. So the hotels are, what? A conspiracy to control human interaction with time. We prefer to think of it as temporal environmental protection, Dr. Hartwell said, like national parks that allow people to experience wilderness without damaging the ecosystem. Our hotels allow safe exploration of temporal phenomena without risking paradox cascades. Professor Blackwood activated another display showing personnel files and research data. Dr. Mitchell, your work on cellular aging has brought you very close to discovering methods for biological temporal manipulation. Our predictive models suggest that within 5 years your research could lead to technologies that would allow widespread uncontrolled temporal experimentation. Sarah felt a chill of recognition. Her recent breakthroughs in telomere regeneration and cellular age reversal were indeed pointing toward possibilities that could revolutionize human longevity, or create the kind of temporal chaos the society was describing. What are you asking of me? She said quietly. We're inviting you to join us, said the ancient-looking woman, to redirect your research towards safe, controlled applications and help us manage the growing threat of temporal destabilization. Professor Blackwood leaned forward. Dr. Mitchell, we estimate that without intervention, human civilization will experience a catastrophic temporal paradox cascade within the next 20 years. Climate change, political instability, and technological advancement are creating unprecedented pressure for temporal escape routes. We need scientists like you to help us guide humanity through this crisis. The room fell silent as Sarah processed this information. Everything she had experienced at the hotel, the personal growth, the scientific insights, even her sense of making peace with time, had been part of an elaborate recruitment process. And if I refuse? Dr. Hartwell's expression became sad but determined. Your memories of the hotel's true capabilities would need to be adjusted. You would retain the personal benefits of your stay, but not the knowledge of how the temporal effects work, or the society's existence. Sarah understood she was at a crossroads that would define not just her career, but potentially the future of human civilization's relationship with time itself. Can I see the other facilities? She asked. Can I understand the full scope of what you're asking me to join? Professor Blackwood smiled. We hoped you would ask that. What followed was the most extraordinary month of Sarah's life, a journey that made her original stay at the Chronos Grand seem mundane by comparison. She visited temporal conservation facilities on every continent, each disguised as something innocuous but serving the crucial function of managing humanity's unconscious pressure to manipulate time. There was the exclusive spa in the Swiss Alps, where world leaders came to experience the wisdom of advanced age before making crucial decisions. The meditation retreat in Tibet, where spiritual seekers learn to accept temporal impermanence without seeking to escape it. the experimental school in Finland, where gifted children learn to use their natural temporal sensitivity for timeline stabilization rather than personal advantage. Each facility revealed new aspects of humanity's complex relationship with time, and the delicate work required to prevent temporal catastrophe. Sarah met other society members, physicists, psychologists, historians, and philosophers, who had dedicated their lives to protecting the stability of causality itself. But the most profound revelation came at the society's headquarters, hidden beneath the ruins of an ancient Mayan temple in Guatemala. There, Sarah learned about the true scope of temporal threats facing human civilization. The problem isn't just individual desires to manipulate time, explained Dr. Ramirez, the society's chief temporal theorist. It's that human consciousness is evolving toward greater temporal awareness. More people every year are developing intuitive understanding of time's malleable nature. Dr. Ramirez showed Sarah data indicating that temporal sensitivity was increasing exponentially in the human population. Children were being born with natural abilities to perceive multiple timelines. Adults were spontaneously developing precognitive abilities or experiencing temporal displacement without any external intervention. We estimate that within a generation, temporal abilities will be as common as other forms of human diversity, Dr. Ramirez continued. The question is whether we can guide this evolution toward stability, or whether it will result in temporal chaos. Sarah spent weeks studying the society's research, and gradually came to understand that her choice wasn't just about her own career, it was about whether humanity would navigate its temporal evolution successfully or destroy itself through paradox cascades. But what ultimately convinced Sarah to join the society wasn't the threat of catastrophe, but the positive vision they offered of humanity's temporal future. Imagine, Professor Blackwood told her during their final recruitment meeting, a world where people could safely explore different ages and life experiences, where the wisdom of old age could be combined with the energy of youth, where death became not an ending, but a transition to different forms of temporal existence. The hotels are just the beginning, Dr. Hartwell added. With proper guidance and safeguards, humanity could develop into a truly temporal species, beings who exist across multiple ages simultaneously, who can learn from all possible versions of their lives, who experience time as a dimension to explore rather than a prison to escape. Sarah realized that the society wasn't trying to suppress humanity's temporal evolution, they were trying to guide it toward its highest potential, while preventing the disasters that could arise from uncontrolled temporal experimentation. Her decision to join came with a profound sense of purpose she had never experienced in traditional scientific research. Instead of just studying aging in isolated laboratory conditions, she would be helping to shepherd humanity through the most significant evolutionary transition in its history. Sarah's new role involved establishing additional temporal conservation facilities, training the next generation of temporal researchers, and developing technologies that could safely channel humanity's growing temporal abilities. But perhaps most importantly, she became part of a global network of individuals working to ensure that humanity's relationship with time evolved toward wisdom, compassion, and stability, rather than chaos and destruction. Years later, when Sarah looked back on her journey from skeptical conference attendee to guardian of temporal stability, she realized that her initial stay at the Chronos Grand had been more than just a personal transformation, it had been the beginning of her true life's work. The woman who had discovered the hotel where each room aged you differently had become someone dedicated to helping all of humanity discover the vast possibilities contained within time itself, while ensuring that those possibilities were explored with the wisdom and care necessary to protect the foundation of reality itself. And in quiet moments when Sarah stayed overnight in one of the hotel's temporal rooms to maintain her own balance between different ages and perspectives, she felt profound gratitude for the unexpected path that had led her from studying cellular aging to protecting the temporal evolution of human consciousness itself. The secret she now carried was that humanity was on the verge of becoming a temporal species capable of existing across multiple ages and timelines simultaneously, was both thrilling and sobering. But Sarah had learned that some secrets were worth protecting, especially when they held the key to unlocking humanity's next stage of development, while preventing the catastrophic mistakes that could destroy everything that had been built across thousands of years of human civilization.